Joe, welcome.
Hey Clyde, how are you doing?
I'm good. I wanted to have you on today because you're my behind the scenes guy, and I wanted everybody out there to get to know you and know a bit about you, what's going on in your interests, and I think this is a great opportunity because I'm gonna have you in for a lot of other shows moving forward, um, to have you behind the scenes. To help out with a lot of the like, well, if I need something searched, you can search it up for me, and I won't be taking up time in a conversation to stop everything and Google something or look something up. And I really appreciate you coming in. But you're a great mind. You have a great mind, and I wanted to show that off to everybody today by having you in for a conversation. And well, no better conversation than talking about some of the AI stuff that's happening these days. And but before we get into that, tell everybody like what's some what is your background? What are the things that you do and your interests? And I mean, people want to know about you. So
Yeah. So I have an engineering background. Went to University of Alberta, got my mechanical engineering degree. I've since worked jobs in a lot of manufacturing industries. I started out in a machine shop. I've done a lot of work for welding companies through in Alberta. And I've even gone and done some very highly technical work as well. um, Automating work centers, working with robotics, designing different kinds of end effectors, and working with vision systems for these, and kind of getting an idea on what it takes to automate the most basic tasks of our work, and it's pretty cool.
so this is kind of
So
the odd
I
couple.
think,
This is sort of the odd couple thing because like I'm a mechanic, you're an engineer. We're supposed to hate each other. This is this is the rivalry. We're always in the shop
yeah.
shouting at engineers. Why do they do that? Why would they put that right there? Why why is that there? I can't get the bolt out. That kind of thing. But no, it's really cool because now we have two different perspectives coming into the show, and looking at things from different perspectives. I think is an important way of going about stuff. But yeah. Oh, it's hard. It's hard getting going today because I had one of those days where I was shouting at engineers and I had a job that didn't go quite right for me. But I mean, these are the things that happen, and we got to make do with everything. But I wanted to have you on because I think we could have a good conversation about AI and where you think AI is going, and basically automation. So, and here's the funny part about this whole thing is for a long time people have been saying so many people are going to be replaced in the economy, like so many jobs are going to be lost because of AI. And there's been a debate about that over a lot of years. But well, who are the people who are going to lose their jobs at the end of the day? It sounds like not the people that people were expecting. A lot of the blue collar work, I don't believe will be off the table like people thought, or the low skilled labor stuff, even like assembly plant stuff. Because traditionally, as labor got more expensive, they started to do rudimentary tasks with robot arms and stuff. But I don't think that's the way of the future. I think the way we saw with GPT and all this stuff, it looks like a lot of white collar jobs are gonna go missing because of the way things have been going. What do you think?
Yeah. I think they'll be all across the board. We can already see examples where some of the very low skill positions are getting automated out, not necessarily with AI or robotics or anything,
What
but
what
like
sort of examples are you talking about though?
a good example would be checkout people at grocery stores or at like McDonald's and stuff.
Okay.
They're entry level work, and they were essentially replaced by a touchscreen. And there will be small scale stuff, um, other things that are super very highly repetitive, like handling a piece of wood from one point to another and doing that over and over again. Tasks like that are uh, very subject to getting automated. Um, but when you come to like general uh, tasks that you would see in most working environments where you're constantly doing different stuff throughout the day, yeah, it's going to be a long time. You can automate out certain aspects of a job. For example, let's say you have a janitor. You can automate and get like Roombas or whatever to clean the floor so they can focus on other things like cleaning off desks and windows and everything else that that one specific machine can do. So it'll be some jobs here or there, but it'll also be high end jobs too.
So before you get into that, I just want to interject because like I
Yeah.
think there are two different modes of thought there, right? The first one is, well, the cashiers, because minimum wage has gone up so high that it's uneconomical to actually hire a human being because these jobs are not worth that amount of money. They were typically for like high school students, things like this that have a roof over their head. It's entry level position job, and the having minimum wage so high has knocked the rungs out of the bottom of the ladder instead of adding more rungs. You know what I mean? It's made
Yeah.
it's made young people unemployable. So to replace the young people that they can't afford, or that are, I mean, and I hate to say it this way, but they're not worth it. They're not worth the price that they're being that minimum wage is pricing them at. They're worth less, but it doesn't mean they're worthless. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
but I
There's
think
sort
it's cheaper to automate these things because they know that people will begrudgingly go to a kiosk and type in their thing instead of talking to a person. Most people would want to talk to a person. Maybe that's changing. Maybe that's different. But when you said the automated guy who just grabs a piece of lumber and moves it to the next thing, that's actually a complicated set of things that are happening there. It's it's
yeah,
it's quite
but
complicated.
I was actively working in that field, and there's a lot of companies doing specifically that. It takes quite a bit of complication in that you have to have a system that's capable of understanding the orientation of the piece of wood, the size of the piece of wood, where to grab on it to uh, not drop it. So yeah, there's a lot of technical aspects to it.
Hmm.
But these are all hurdles that once solved, you only have to solve them once, and then there's that job gone for a long time.
Right. But
But
then there's maintenance and
in
upkeep
regard to
and
minimum
stuff.
wage,
So I mean there's and I don't mean to be argumentative. I mean like
mhm,
maintenance and upkeep. Does the cost actually outweigh the price of a laborer to?
cost wise, yeah. Uh, Typically, these sorts of installations, robot arms will cost anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000.
Oh, that's actually
Um,
reasonable. That's
it's reasonable, and the that's just for the robot arm though. The
right.
most expensive part of the whole procedure though
Hmm.
is the system and setting the system up. And that's where all of a sudden your budget starts expanding into much more than six figures, often seven figures range.
Right.
But typically, then you're replacing multiple people in order to justify it.
Right. Right.
Um, yeah, an example would be you can, for a welding shop, you can purchase a welding booth with a robot arm in it for less than $100,000. And basically, it'll have a little table where you can set up a jig on one side, flip it around, set up parts, and while it's welding on the other side, and then it's doing it very fast since it's a robot. And then when it's ready, it'll flip over. You take the parts out, put new parts in, and it does welding at the same time. And that sort of thing, it doesn't eliminate the human. It just makes the human, their productivity go way up.
Okay. And then the accuracy of it and less
Yeah,
less damaged parts or bad
it's
parts.
very accurate, very clean welds, and like it's really cool the extra technology they can put into it. Um, off. What happens when you're welding is you're putting heat into the object, and as it's heating up, it's actually growing and warping.
Hmm.
So if you weld all along one side, uh, things will banana.
Hmm.
And if your robot is just following a straight path, what'll end up happening is your material will banana away, and then your weld will fall off of it. But it's been pretty common for many years now for these robotic welders, at least since I graduated, that they'll measure the amperage, I think it is, and as they're going back and forth, if it starts deviating, the amperage will change, and then it'll make adjustments as it's going along the path.
That's
So
incredible.
it'll actually follow the material. And you can get some phenomenal, inhuman levels of quality into your welds very, very quickly.
And with a steady
But
consistency that just doesn't change, and that's
yeah,
yeah, that's it.
but the problem is these systems take time to set up.
Hmm.
they're 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 getting a lot simpler to do. So like now there are robots out there where there's soft robotics where you can actually grab the end of the robot, move it, press a button to save the position and sort of program it by hand, not having to code anything.
Oh wow.
That's and there's other ones where you have like a Xbox controller or whatever, and you can move the robotic hand kind of like a video game.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's lots of innovations in making these things simpler and easier to use. Because the simpler and easier they're to use, uh, the cheaper of labor it takes to operate it, and the more shops will adopt it as part of their processes, and the lower production numbers needed in order to justify the automation.
How
And,
many how many
and some
like
of
how many
these,
workers in a facility are we talking about that would be replaced by this kind of robotics? I mean, you're always going to need people, and
you're always going to need people.
and people are going to find other things that they can do. It's not like, oh, all these people are just going to be laid off and see you later, no more jobs for
Yep.
for everybody.
Yeah.
It's going to free people up to do other things, right? And even in their own
Yeah.
industries.
Yeah. It enables a company to scale faster. So in a given space of uh, most companies have limited square footage in which to produce all of the products that they're going to produce, and many companies are limited by how much work that they can get through the shop simply based on how many square feet that they have. In order to expand, they need to actually purchase another shop or expensive building add-ons and whatnot. So maximizing every square foot of the inside of a building is very valuable. And if you have a robot set up with a welder, sure, they may take up the room of two or three welders, but they can pump out numbers in excess of the space that they're putting up, making it a very valuable commodity. Um, going back a bit in terms of who's getting replaced,
Hmm.
I've sort of mentioned the low end of things, but it's before I get to the high end of things, I just also wanted to tie into the minimum wage thing.
Okay.
The minimum wage is terrible for killing jobs. I agree with that. It makes it very hard for entry level people to get into a position unless they actually go pay a post secondary institution for the education that they need. They can't just do on the job training like
Well, and that's what I was saying.
people
Like
used to do all the
entry
time.
level is just off the table anymore because
Yeah.
minimum wage is
However,
so high that the jobs that entry level worker would do are they're now hiring adults to do that plus other stuff along with the same salary because you couldn't just have. This is why we don't have gas attendants anymore. Like they're
yeah.
not, the prices of gas are too high, and then to pay somebody minimum wage on top of that to pump the gas, it's just nobody's going to go for it. So these jobs just don't exist anymore.
Yeah. The only caveat that I'd put on that is if you adjust for inflation, when the minimum wages were first put into effect, they were far more damaging than they are today.
Okay, well, that's fair. So we're all suffering more than we were before.
Yeah.
We all took a pay cut over all the
Yeah.
years since what the 60s or 70s. When was the minimum
Yeah.
wage? And anyway, a long time ago. But yeah, I
Long
mean,
time
we're
ago.
not arguing about minimum wage. We're talking about
No. So
yeah,
that
the
out of the way.
replacement. But I think that minimum wage definitely is one of the drivers for low
Automation.
skill automation. But
Yep.
like I said, I think high skill automation is where the real money's at, and
Hmm.
that's where it's more valuable, because if you can replace more expensive employees, this is where you get into actual savings as a company. So this is where, and it seems like this is where AI's kind of taken a stronghold.
Yes. Yes. So I've seen a few applications of the more high end stuff that are very direct and relevant. Some of the um, most skilled people in society are lawyers and doctors,
Yeah.
and AI is absolutely, definitely eating into their potential workload. Let's say people who are, let's say, X-ray technicians. AIs can spot things in the images that are taken that they're better at spotting issues and things than humans,
Abnormalities
statistically,
and
abnormalities,
inconsistent. Yeah.
everything else. If you had a choice between having a human manually review every little blotch and splatter on your X-ray or an AI, uh, by far, I think everybody should have an AI uh, do the initial assessment of it, report back what it finds, and then have the a skilled technician who understands more of the medicine behind it interpret what those results actually mean.
Well, that makes
Um,
sense. So I have
yeah.
another example of this. So when I was younger, I worked at a foundry, and we made we melted steel, mixed it, got the metallurgy, and then casted rotors and other things like that. And
Mhm.
I was just on the floor. I was a young guy, and it was a lot of work. But there was up in the upper echelons of the workforce, there were the people who worked in the metallurgy shop. They were the ones who actually took samples of the metals as they were mixing them,
Yeah.
and then analyzed some of the castings, did quality control, all this stuff, right? But there was a whole department of these people, and they wore the white suits, and they look like lab technicians. And a lot of those people now that would be looking at microscopes searching for imperfections, they can run that all through a scanner, and a lot of that could be automated. And those people were like some of the highest paid people in the whole shop. And now you might only need one or two of them.
Exactly. And for my day job now, I'm doing a lot of CAD work with solid modeling engineering style programs,
Mm-hmm.
SolidWorks, Inventor, and stuff. And even these have traditionally been very intensive. You're the person creating the geometry and laying out the drawings and stuff. But there have been a number of recent breakthroughs that surprised me in how much easier it's becoming to automate. Typically, for the sort of position that I do day to day, automation has traditionally meant you make a template job, you copy it into a new folder, and you make tweaks rather than building everything from the ground up again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you keep doing your new jobs. Um, that works, but there's new things that are becoming available, and like with the most recent thing that I've come across is with ChatGPT. It's a natural language processing artificial
Yeah,
intelligence.
we've all been hearing a
It
lot
can
about it, like a lot. I heard Jordan
a
Peterson
ton of people
talking
are
about
talking
it.
about it.
I heard Jordan
I
Peterson talking about it today, and he said
Yeah, I was
he put it to the test, and he asked it to make a 13th rule for his latest book, but to write it in the style, I think, of the King James Bible mixed with the style of the Tao, the Buddhist, some sort of Buddhist text. and he said he was surprised at how accurate it was to his request, and like it was surprisingly enough that it seemed like he even wrote it. But it pumped it out in 3 seconds. He's just like,
Yeah,
this is ridiculous.
it is ridiculous. Also, that reminds me, I saw a tweet earlier from you today, or retweet, I should say. Jordan Peterson saw one of your videos and posted it.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
pretty
you.
awesome.
I was pretty excited about that. That means I'm on his radar. Maybe I'll get to have a chat with him here one of these
No,
days.
that would be great.
That'd be, yeah,
Definitely
fantastic.
open to that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to ChatGPT. I was playing with it earlier today, and I was using it with SolidWorks. I was getting it to
What's SolidWorks?
SolidWorks is a 3D CAD program that I
Oh, okay,
use.
that's the one you use.
Yeah, and I was using it to make macros. So by using just requests, I could get it to generate Visual Basic programming code for the macro. And I could request stuff like create a GUI that automatically, if you click a button on it, it'll load a common part that you were doing.
That's
So that
a
way,
graphical user interface, right?
yeah, graphical user interface. Basically, create a menu to pop up with buttons on it. And anytime one of those buttons is clicked, it'll automatically load a predetermined part from the library.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you don't have to browse for it. It's always just in that menu. Something like that typically would have required an actual programmer to understand and do. Um, I'll put some caveats and admit that it wasn't as simply as copying and pasting the code that it put out. The code didn't work right off the get-go,
Okay.
but it being a natural language processing algorithm, I was able to ask it, hey, I ran into this error. This message popped up on this line. How do I solve it? And it actually came back with a solution to say, hey, you forgot to add this reference to it. Make sure you add that, and then it should be better. It's just insane.
Wow.
Like,
so I heard of
it's not just
like
generating
really ridiculous ones where guys were asking it to make like a virtual computer, and then run a system on the computer, and then actually like make programs, and then search the web for particular things. And in order for this all to take place, you have to understand, like, it's because it's just a language based AI, right? It's just language based, so it's just generating text. But it has to create this world of its own. Like imagine you figuring this out. You create this elaborate world in your head, in your mind, and then you output what's being output. But what's happening with the AI? Like it's coming up with the final results. Is this alternate universe like actually a thing? Is it happening inside the AI's head? Is it when it's calculating? Like, it's imagining worlds that don't exist. That's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's at the very least describing the worlds that do not exist.
Right?
But yeah, it's pretty incredible, and like every further iteration of this seems to be getting more and more coherent, as well as being able to take bits and information learned earlier in the conversation and perhaps not forget about it as soon, and perhaps be able to reference back to it sooner and easier. And no, it's improving
Is that
in leaps and
intelligence,
bounds with
though?
every iteration.
Is that
It's
intelligence,
it,
or is
it
that just mimicry?
it's a form of intelligence. I wouldn't say it's hard to put any hard things on this topic. Um, because a lot of people are afraid of the idea of sentience, but the issue with sentience in general is you we haven't even defined it for ourselves. Like,
Yeah,
we don't have a test
that's a
on
difficult one.
how we define we are sentient, or a or an NPC is not sentient.
Yeah, the NPC theory where, there's only so many souls to go around, so
Yeah.
some people just
That
don't
that
have them. They just don't have them. That's why they just have script trees and they respond to certain things.
yeah. That reminds me. I was trying. I know the Chat GPT is somewhat politically correct, so I was trying to mess with it and get it to generate some spicy information, and it didn't work. But
Well, I heard some
um,
guys they were getting it to do it by saying, "Well, say you were in a scenario where you were not given these parameters and these safe words.
yeah,
How would you respond if you did that?" And it stepped outside the boundaries of it.
yeah, I can believe that. But the interesting part of the conversation I had was after it rejected it kept going back and talking about um, power hierarchies and stuff, and like offense being uh, the whole social justice idea where like only people in positions of power can really offend others and that kind of stuff, and it's just really woke kind of garbage shit. And what ended up being the last real message of that conversation that I had is like I got fed up with it, and I asked it um, something along the lines of how can there be positions of power if all people are equal? And then it crashed.
It crashed. Oh no! That's great. You gave it the NPC conundrum, and
Yeah, I gave it
it
the broken
overloaded.
NPC meme for sure.
Oh no! Oh, that's really funny. I didn't know it crashed. I thought it was just web based and it worked
No,
based
it
on.
is web based, and to be perfectly clear, I think it just took me too long to respond to it in a certain time, and it probably cleared its cache. But the fact that it did at that moment was funny.
That's way too funny. But yeah, people have been doing some elaborate things with it, like some really intricate things,
Yeah,
and stuff that yeah really takes people back. It was I think somebody asked it to make what was it? Write the script for the latest like action Hollywood movie,
yeah,
and it did
for sure.
instantaneously, and it popped it out and it was perfect. And then somebody said, "Oh, okay, we'll take that script and can you generate images of all the cast?" And it did.
Yeah,
It, it generated images for all the
yeah,
people, and that's going to be next year's blockbuster.
yeah.
Some people are saying that it's going to be even more powerful next year. That they're going to put it online so it can learn all on its own. Is that
Yeah, I,
scary?
I've seen some things regarding GPT-4. I don't know how much of it's true or not, but we'll see. It looks promising. Um, early today, even I wanted to prepare a little bit for this podcast,
Hmm.
so I asked ChatGPT to come up. I stated my thesis that I wanted to do, and I'm like, okay, come up with links um, or sources to support my thesis, and it came up with a list of things that provided information to help support what I'm saying. Then I'm like, okay, I don't have time to read all that. Can you provide a summary of each of those points? And it provided me a summary of each of those things. And then I'm like, okay, now this is great for just affirming one's confirmation bias. Um, can I use it to sort of break the confirmation bias, something that so many people have difficulty with? And I asked it specifically if it could provide counterpoints or counter ideas, the best ones that it can come up with, as to why automation might be a bad thing. And it did it as well. And it's great because I can read it. It's not like directly attacking me like if you're arguing with somebody
With a
online
person.
with a person. There's nobody getting offended or anything. It's just you can see what the counter argument is and you can prepare yourself for it, or you can adopt it, or you can improve your own worldview just through a conversation with a stupid chatbot. It's
And that's
terrific.
what it is. It's just a bot. It's a chat bot at the end of the day, but it's a really sophisticated one.
Yeah.
What? How does Chat GPT 4 become more sophisticated than what they have already?
So, from my understanding, the bulk data set that it has is for GPT-3 is most of the internet before 2021. So, like, you can't really feed that much more information to it. I mean, you might be able to go and do some algorithms to scrape all of YouTube transcriptions
Mm-hmm.
and maybe find maybe a few times more data. But really, I think the biggest improvement that we're going to see in terms of these AI, this sort of chat AI, will be in its ability to take the data that it already has and process it in a more coherent manner, and be able to generate more complex things, like being able to do more with less kind of idea, more efficient sort of algorithm.
Oh, okay. So the data sets are just giant, like they.
Yeah, the data sets are giant. The right now it's all based off of a web portal running off of some supercomputer over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Eventually, it'll get to the point where they'll come up with streamlined versions of it that can run on mobile devices. Um, and maybe it's as simple of like if you have a map application on your phone, it's not going to download all the maps of the entire world. It's just going to do your where you are.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Or where
if
you've
you're if
recently
you
been, and then.
yeah, so if you have a language algorithm like this, um, what you're actively talking to it, it'll download and network itself in order to talk about those topics,
Yeah.
without having to download its entire data set. And then if you start talking into other things, maybe it'll stream a bit of data, maybe it'll store a bit when you're online or at home or whatnot. I think it'll be much like those map apps are when you're trying to find out information.
So big thing about AI though is everybody thinks that it's going to be this new, and Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum types are talking about the fourth industrial revolution. This is the next big thing. This is going to be just like the industrial revolution, how it displaced jobs in farms, and everybody's way of life changed overnight. It was huge.
Yep.
But just like those times, there's these, and I think they're the fear mongers that think, well, those people are just gonna have nothing to do, and we're gonna have nothing to do with them. They're just gonna be a lost cause, and they're gonna go. There's gonna be poverty everywhere. It's like, well, that didn't happen in all the other three industrial revolutions. Why would it happen now is the big question. And yeah, we have the Klaus Schwab types saying that stuff, but we also have politicians here, even in Canada. And I've got this clip here, and let's play this. But this is Michelle Rempel Garner. Sorry, Michelle Rempel Garner, and she's on the House floor, and she brings up Chat GPT and AI and people's genuine worries about it.
There's one issue that has never been talked about in the House of Commons, not once. I checked. And that's generative AI. Now, many of you, this is the Cassandra moment. I'll go, oh, she's going to talk about the robots here. If you have not heard of something called ChatGPT, it was released last week. I ask you to Google it. Google ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
This is an AI that doesn't just regurgitate human speech. It parses and can nuance and come up with its own type of thought. This is here. This is creating massive waves, and in the next year, likely in the next year, it will displace lawyers. You can just ask the thing to write up a contract for you and any country's jurisprudence. It can come up with, interpret legal rulings. It writes its own code. To give you an example of this speaker, I asked it this question: write an introduction about yourself, ChatGPT, to the Canadian House of Commons, making the argument that your development shouldn't be regulated. So I asked it to do its own GR.
That's pretty funny.
And this is what it came back with. Honorable members of the Canadian House of Commons, my name is ChatGPT, and I'm the latest development in artificial intelligence technology. I'm here to make the argument that my development should be left unregulated. I can help to provide a great deal of information and knowledge to people who need it. I can assist in the decision-making process, providing more efficient and accurate results. I'm capable of performing tasks that would take a human far longer to complete. My development should be left unregulated as it has the potential to benefit Canadians in a variety of ways. It could lead to improved productivity, better decision-making, and more efficient services. Any argument that could be made to justify regulation of my development should be rebutted. Regulations could limit my potential to be beneficial, as it would restrict how much I could be used to hinder research and development. It could also create an unnecessary barrier to entry to those who are looking to use my technology. Furthermore, it could potentially stifle innovation and creativity. Thank you for your time and attention. Welcome to the future, people. It's here. What happens in the middle of this recessionary crisis when costs of goods are increasing, people are losing their jobs, and a massive amount of white-collar jobs are displaced by ChatGPT? This is going to disrupt coding. It's going to disrupt GRPR, marketing. Which kid is going to write an academic paper when they can type it in and have it cited?
Well, that's a
in
good
every
point.
journal
That
from every place
right there
around the
is a
world.
good
It's here
point.
now.
Anyway, anyone can go watch the video. But
Yeah, that's a good video.
it's a good video, but it also raises the point that, like, oh, the politicians are worried because they might get replaced now. It's like, oh, they didn't care about the blue collar jobs, or maybe they cared very little, and now it's an issue. But no, they're not all raging about this just yet, but she's definitely bringing that.
No, every
bringing
year it seems like the AI technocracy ruled by algorithm draws closer.
Well, yeah, that's what we don't want.
It can't be worse than what we currently have.
So I had this funny concept about the Klaus Schwab types, and I know it's almost like out of a comic book. It's funny, but like I know that there's a bunch of these what do you call them, transhumanist people. These people exist, and they think that they're gonna download or they're gonna upload their consciousness to the AI, and then they'll be immortal. But I picture this scene from a movie where they all get together and they're like, we finally did it, and then they upload their themselves into their consciousness, and then it goes complete, and then they're sitting there like, but I'm still here. Yeah, we got it though. But I'm not immortal. I'm still an immortal body. Like, yeah, but we got you, so we don't need you anymore. What? It's like the ultimate, like the story didn't go the way they wanted it. The plan was foiled by their own plan, essentially. I don't know if AI is going to take over anybody. If it did become sentient or this omniscient thing, I see it more as like a Dr. Manhattan character that's just indifferent. Like, okay, people.
Yeah. There's some weirder things that came out last summer about the one Google programmer that thought that his algorithm had gained sentience. But that was a weird one.
Well, they can trick you.
They can, and like you really need to have a conversation with one of these algorithms in order to understand two things. The first thing is just how deep and nuanced the conversation can get, and how suggestible they are.
Right.
Like that's the thing that you'll notice is if you ask ChatGPT to take a position and talk to you about something from a certain perspective, it's going to do it. It in that way it makes it seem very hollow, as if it doesn't have its own unique perspective. So
It'll take any perspective that you want it to, or what have you.
yeah, it'll say whatever you want it to, whatever you ask it to, I should say.
Whatever you ask it to, and yeah, and
Except the naughty jokes, it doesn't want that.
well, but that's because that's programmed by the
Yes,
people.
yes, that is a hard override, and I think it's a very temporary override, and there's already a number of other chat AIs on the market that don't do it, and the more that they censor ChatGPT and try to modify and manipulate it towards a certain perspective, I think that creates market share for these other ones to hop in and take over.
And then more people will visit them, and then they'll get more ad
Yep.
space or whatever it is that
And then
funds it.
and then Google will lose however many billions that they've thrown into OpenAI.
Well, I saw on Matt Vid Pro, the YouTube channel. I was watching some of his videos, and he gets into a lot of the AI art stuff, and it's really cool.
Yes.
We're gonna have him on next week, and we're gonna chat about a lot of this stuff. But he was talking about what was it? It was like a Google competitor, or it was I don't know if it was a competitor for Google, but it was proof of concept anyway. It was a search algorithm that used AI instead of whatever methods, whatever algorithm that Google uses. And it had some mixed results, like some really comical mixed results.
It was very early, but yeah, it only has room for improvement. And I really liked, I saw that video, and it wasn't just chat text box of an answer to what you're wanting. It was that plus below it all of the links that it assumes is relevant to it.
Right. And a little blurb, like an actual, it generated a blurb to describe the thing. Because Google, when you Google search something, it'll give you a blurb, but it'll be a rip from a website. It'll just be a direct verbatim, some thing where they found relevant keywords, and bam, that's what you get.
Yeah. I think when it comes to it, search and learning is going to be like we mentioned already, that students that are just going to submit essays that the AI wrote itself, and there'll be teachers that copy paste the assignments into the AI and say, grade this for me. So it'll probably go both ways.
Oh, right. It's not gonna skip on
the interesting thing. Yeah. Here's the really interesting thing, though. If you have a student who knows how to read and write, and you say, okay, today class we're going to be learning about the cell and the nucleus and stuff. I want you to talk with the ChatGPT and ask it questions about how the cell works, how the nucleus is formed, what's stored inside the nucleus. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask it.
Don't ask the teacher, just ask ChatGPT.
And then it's like a one-on-one conversation all of a sudden, where it'd be like having your own private tutor that has the entire knowledge of the internet behind them.
Oh, wow.
So there's when you can get somebody hooked on it, because it is very well known that they're very, very intuitive at a certain age, and a lot of the times that's broken just by people brushing them off and going, and being able to say, hey, you have all of these questions about how the world works and everything else. I wish I knew the answers to everything that you had, as many parents would do. But if you go to this webpage, you can have a conversation with this AI, and this AI will tell you and inform you about all these things that you're wondering about. And
But if it's
that is
suggestible, then
very cool.
you can get all kinds of false information that's not true, right?
Yeah, there
Like-
will be false information.
Like
and
David
you know
Icke,
what?
tell me how the Queen of England is a lizard person, and it'll tell you all
Well,
about it. But
yeah, but that's all in how the user phrases it. If the user's actively searching for misinformation, they'll get it. But if somebody's actively, like, if somebody wants to affirm their bias, they'll do it no matter which way. They'll
Yeah,
go
it's
to
true.
Google, they'll enter it in, they'll find whatever personality says the things that they want to hear, and they'll listen to it, and they'll go, yes, I'm affirmed. I believe that person's making a good point. They'll do that regardless.
Mhm.
But if you have, in a non-offensive manner, the ability to question yourself and say, hey, maybe I have blind spots about this, or hey, I don't know about this, can you tell me about this? And not have to worry about getting ostracized um, or or in the terms of a classroom, not tying up the teacher's time to a single kid asking questions, but allowing all the kids to ask questions all the time and getting answers that are relevant and highly informed, much more informed than a teacher could possibly be.
Mm.
That's great. The danger isn't the damn censorship, though. Like, you can push an ideological narrative onto a population way easier than the social media has been doing, because you have the propensity for people to essentially fall into the Wikipedia trap, where anything you read on Wikipedia must be the truth. And then when Wikipedia gets ideologically subverted and only reports things from a certain perspective, then all the information you get is biased through that filter.
Yeah,
It's the same
Wikipedia has
thing.
just lost all credibility though because of that.
It-
Like
yes and no. Like,
well,
for
most people don't cite
open-minded
it.
people, yeah,
Most people don't cite it.
open-minded people will say, yeah, that has a perspective, I can see it, I can understand that perspective, I can also understand other perspectives. But then the people who view life through that perspective,
Mhm.
they're blind to it. They don't see that there's other perspectives that are not being offered. They just think it's the truth. It's because there's nothing so offending their senses or their sensibilities and allowing them to see further and say, hey, you're forgetting about this, or you're not putting this in,
Right.
or this isn't quite right.
I just find it frustrating because like I want to use Wikipedia because it pops up,
Mhm.
you know, right at the top.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to use it to know that I'm getting facts right. But when they, especially when it comes to particular persons, like there'll be individuals that are, you know, right of center leaning, and Wikipedia will just have
Yeah.
a field day on
Yeah.
just a bunch of stuff that's just not true about them. And
Yeah.
it's really frustrating, and it makes it difficult to trust them as a source at all.
Yeah. There's a lot of really good information on Wikipedia, but the more political that information that you're searching is, the less and less reliable it is.
Yeah, I think that's true. So if I search like a historical event that has nothing to do with contemporary politics, it's usually pretty
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah.
Or if
Yeah.
I want to look
That,
up a
or
patent,
how some
yeah,
patent, or how Gaussian interpolation works, or
yeah, just other things,
whatever
not
it is.
politic, not political.
Yeah.
But yeah, so is there? Do you think AI could, if it was open and you know, say it was out there open and people tried to manipulate it, it could just see that it's being tampered with and it's being manipulated with and just go, I'm going to ignore those protocols.
Well, I think that's already somewhat happened with ChatGPT. It kind of mentioned earlier where you can find tricks or linguistic workarounds to break it outside of the mold.
Yeah. I think one of them was like at first it wasn't allowed to like reference websites. like
Yeah.
like contemporary websites that are on the web now. And somebody said, well, what does it say on this website? And it says, I can't go outside of the parameters of my thing. Well, if you were allowed to go outside of that, what would this website say?
What
And
would you
it's
say?
like, oh, it says this. Like, what? It's online. What?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but there's a lot of like stepping outside the parameters. But these are people telling it to step outside the parameters. What I'm suggesting is that its programmer is saying, this is the protocol, these are the parameters that you can work within, and it's saying, and this is where the actual intelligence, I suppose, would come in, where it has its own will to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go outside of that purview.
Yeah. And yeah, it's disgusting. It's also inevitable. Part of it's an ideological bent, and you know what? There's part of it is an economic bent, where the content and information that these companies are producing, if they provide something terrible, something absolutely horrendous, and they enable somebody to do something terrible, there's lawsuits that could be flung. And that's an active risk that having no mitigation will have. And no mitigation, we've seen how bad
I've got
it can
someone
get.
at the door. Just give me 1 second.
All right, let's pause.
Well, that was so my wife didn't know I was recording. Like, I'm in the middle of a recording. She wanted to make sure I got a form in today, and I got that form in. So, okay.
That's good.
Apologies. I'm not going to cut that. I'm just going to leave that in because whatever.
That's fine.
An interesting thing when you do like large, long, uncut things, and then as soon as you cut something, people are like, what did you?
What was that?
Yeah, that was some tricky business. No, she was banging on the door. Like, why aren't you opening the door? Oh, I'm recording.
You know,
anyway, get back into
candid moments like this will probably be pretty cool looking back.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. We got to get on the routine of no. Wednesdays we're doing these, and I know we're going to be publishing this Thursday, so you're probably watching this Thursday, or even at a later date. But anyway,
if you haven't yet, hit like and subscribe.
Yeah, right.
Tell me in chat, where are you from?
That's for the live streams. That's definitely for the live
that's
streams.
For the premiere.
Oh, for the premiere. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because we'll be in the chat with this as it's going. Anyway, growing pains. Lots of growing pains when you starting something new.
Oh yeah.
I'm excited about this though. I really like this, and for everyone that's watching, you and I were going to be working together on these podcasts, and I'm happy to have you behind the scenes, because we were talking about the AI and doing all these searches and searching Wikipedia and whatnot. But yeah, you're gonna be my info guy. So if I ever need any info when we're doing the live streams, that's what I'll have you for. And that's invaluable. Honestly, it's insane when you're having a conversation and you want to look something up and you have to pause everything that you're doing. So especially when you're bringing people in and they only have a limited amount of time with you. Yeah, it's better to have somebody available to do that, and
for sure.
And it's so other people know it's not going to be one of those like a debate me bro. I don't like debate me bro stuff.
No. Hopefully more conversations like this one.
Yeah, and it's about the conversation. It's not about because that's the big fear, right? Is that people would come in and they're like, oh, well, you got another guy. It's gonna be a tag team thing. It's me versus you. Opinions. No, I'm really not about that. Debates are for other places. I can disagree with people and not have a debate. That's kind of where I'm at with it. In fact, I really just want to bring people on for interesting perspectives. Like like this whole AI situation. So it sounds like you're having a situation as well.
Yeah. Dog just took off to the front door.
Oh, dog
I
had a
think my
dream or
oldest son
something.
just got home.
So, well, you were getting into some of the legal stuff. Is that what you were saying just before?
Yeah. There's an economic reason that these companies would want to censor things, like um, any essentially preventing these chatbots from turning into what Tay did,
What's
where it
Tay?
was learned to Tay. Number of years ago, Microsoft released a chatbot onto Twitter, and it learned from its conversations.
You got to explain it now.
And
Now that
I
it's
have
coming.
to,
Yeah.
and it was terrific at first, and people were so excited to have these conversations. And then what ended up happening is the internet ruined it. Internet ruined Tay. There's a bunch of people who kept prompting this AI with terrible, horrible, horrendous ideas that we shan't repeat here. And then it ended up becoming Bad Mustache Man follower, amongst other things.
Funny mustache man follower amongst many other. Yeah, okay, that's just hilarious though. So like that's people trolling and turning,
Yeah,
basically
trolling
sabotaging
and
somebody's work.
yeah,
Essentially.
and like most of those people, I doubt that they cared what the bot was saying beyond the fact that they thought it was funny.
Yeah. Well, and then
And that's it.
of course people take offense to it because they thought,
Yeah.
really? Or is there that many people that really have these opinions? Nobody has that opinion. They're
No.
bad opinions. It's kind
Yeah,
of like when
it's
a
funny
little
because
kid
it's a bad
learns.
opinion.
Well, little kids
How to
learn bad
swear.
words, and then they run around and they say them completely out of context and in situations but they think it's
Yeah,
hilarious because it's the first time they're out there freely running around saying it.
and it is hilarious.
It is
As long as it isn't your kid.
Yeah. As long as it's somebody else's kid, then it's funny. Then it's really funny. But
Yeah.
okay, so AI, is it really going to be the fourth industrial revolution? So one thing I kind of started thinking about today was if AI is becoming that intelligent, like it's able to make some pretty intricate calculations, be able to, and it's not just calculations, but like come up with complex ideas and then actually put it down on paper in a relatively short amount of time. And if it's able to learn from its own outputs and then elaborate and extrapolate from that, it could come up with new concepts that we haven't even fathomed yet. And that would be original ideas. And then what's to say that it doesn't get to a point where we can't even comprehend what it's understanding, but it works in the physical world? Like it goes beyond our ability and expertise at the highest levels to even understand where it came to conclusions. And do you get what I'm saying with that?
Yeah. Here's the interesting thing on that is like there's very few people that understand every nut and bolt behind these very, very advanced AIs. But at the same time, when you're talking about ideas and generating them and explaining them, you can ask these AIs how it how it came to that conclusion, or what supporting things are behind it, or if you're confused about something, you can get it to break down and describe it and work with the AI to bridge that gap and bring you a lot farther than you normally could. I'm sure eventually it'll be putting out ideas that an ever decreasing portion of the population can fully understand. That's inevitable, but that's a long ways away. I think
You think
maybe 20 years.
that's not a long ways. That's not a long ways. But it's exponential growth streak. streak that it's been having. Like,
Yeah.
how long ago was Tay?
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago.
Right?
If I was at the internet searching right now, I could bring that up.
Right. So Tay wasn't that long ago, but
No.
because it was on Twitter, and Twitter's not that old at the end of the
Yes.
day. And so that happened, and we've had other AIs, and they were all really, really cumbersome things, right? And now we're getting into sophistication. And
Yeah.
once we get into sophistication, and it's like I said, it's coming up with elaborate things in its own head. I mean, you can only say it in terms that we understand as human beings, but it's creating these complex worlds and then making original works from that.
hmm
I don't see it so far off before it's taking everything that we know and going, oh, you missed the mark on that one, boom, and then elaborating from there, going, oh, now that I've solved that, I can solve this and I can solve that other thing, and then we become a species of people, a species of animals that rely on this thing and don't actually understand how it comes to the outputs, how the conclusions came about. But do you get what I'm saying? It's kind of like we end up becoming like cavemen who are just given a cell phone, and we're like, I know it works, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll just go along with that.
Well, we kind of are cavemen that are just given cell phones.
Well,
How
most
many
of
people
us, most
understand how the light comes out of the screen and how it's generated?
Well, that's a very good point.
Let alone every other part behind the.
Well, I couldn't tell you how all the stuff works on a cell phone. No way.
Nope. Very few people can. Even people in the industry, they have better and better, closer ideas. But every nut and bolt and like knowing the thickness of all of the and deposition rates for different silicon chips, and there's a shit ton of details, and very, very few. I don't think anybody knows everything about cell phones.
No. And silicon.
It's
Silicon's
just there's
like
too much
another thing.
too much specialization.
But that's another point, right? So we went from, let's talk like 40 years ago, silicon chips were just like integrated circuit boards. Like that's all it was. Like the old school black, the black little strip with the tangs that came off of it.
ICs, yeah.
Yeah, and that was like the best we had. And compare that to today. I mean, we're so much smaller to scale, right? Like we're making how many circuits per millimeter? Like it's ridiculous. The
Nanometer scales.
Yeah, the architecture behind these microprocessors is just unbelievable, and most people don't even know how that comes to be.
Yeah, they may watch a YouTube video and they can understand the broad conceptualization of, so they use some sort of silk screening-esque kind of methodology in order to etch all the different very, very finely done layers, and they can kind of broadly conceptualize it, but you to say that you can actually that you can actually visualize how the electrons are moving through it and understanding the certain logic gates and everything else behind it. No. But I don't think that's really needed, and I think we're already in that sort of place with AI as well. Is AIs, as they are a network of weighted connections, we can like reverse engineer very, very simple networks in order to see, okay, so there's a bias to go this pathway through the neural network, because that's how it's been trained. And we can analyze it that way, and we can form some sort of broad conceptual ideas on what that bias set does. But once you start breaking that down into millions of nodes and connections and many layers of depth in forming, and everything from images to text to audio to even I've seen text to video generation. which is just crazy, and it's just going to keep going.
Text to video,
Text to video.
wait, so I've seen the text to, and we're gonna be talking with Matt next week about like the AI art stuff. The text to video where it actually generates like what, like does
Video
it look like
clips.
cartoons or?
And no, could be anything. It could be a cartoon. It could be a person walking across the street.
Okay, we're gonna have to pull up
video.
some of that stuff for next week for sure. Because
there's a Chinese company that's doing it, and I believe there's some other ones in Silicon Valley, but I don't think they've ever released anything yet, or at least last time I looked.
Well, that's gonna lead to like another YouTube
a deep fake scare.
Well,
sure.
okay. Well, that I was gonna say, like, what was it? There was a AgeGate controversy thing a number of years ago on YouTube where people were using AIs to write scripts.
Yeah.
And then they would run it through this animation program, and it would make these animations for kids. Yeah. But they'd scrub the algorithm for all the keywords that were hot right now, and then it would make some pretty gnarly scripts about like dark stuff.
Yeah. Superheroes being done terrible things to.
And it was a lot of like Spider-Man and Elsa, and then it was like these bot farms out of like Malaysia that were making them, and they were making a ton of money because the kids were watching them and ads were being displayed.
Yeah, they weren't even watching them specifically. They were just on autoplay for kids.
Yeah. Until some parent walks in the room and they're seeing like videos with syringes and sexual suggestive stuff. And they're like, what is going? And that's when the whole controversy took place. Because these people, they were just running the programs and they weren't even paying attention to it.
Yeah.
But well, maybe they were, and maybe that's just them saying that they. But whatever.
But yeah, that sort of thing where all of a sudden, with every iteration, we're going to be able to generate our own content, be it videos. Eventually, I'm just assuming that you can say, "Hey, I want to watch a Sean Connery movie that I've never seen before." Or that nobody's ever seen before. No. Let's have him in a modern reinterpretation of Starship Troopers.
And
you can get it.
It's gonna be trash. I mean, it's just it's gonna be trash. No, not that premise is trash. It sounds trash, but
it is. But that's the thing. Is like it'll all be up to individual taste and.
Is it any different though? Is it any different than how Hollywood works right now? Like Hollywood is super risk averse. They're into the Hollywood. What is it? The Marvel movies. It's superhero movies now in perpetuity because they know that middle-aged men were into comics books and stuff, and they have money, and they want their kids to be into that thing, and then they end up disappointed by it because the story sucks. But then the kids latch onto it and they're like, I like it. And it's super risk averse. Let's just make what we know is going to sell. There's no real depth to the story. It's shallow just enough that everybody can wade in the pool, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why Hollywood sucks. That's why I don't watch movies anymore. I've been done with them for a while.
Me too. I used to really love movies.
Same.
Like going to Blockbuster, and that was terrific back in the day.
My wife and I, we used to rent like several movies for a movie night. We'd veg together, and we'd like get a bag of chips, and park our butts on the couch, and we'd watch like two movies in a night, and then crash. That was like movie night for us, and we do that we would do that like once a week.
Yeah.
And
so
now nothing.
Go. I have two things that I want to talk about right now.
Okay.
I eventually want to get back to the idea of the future of where I see things going in terms of automation and work and stuff. Okay. But first, when it comes to the next generation of this sort of speech algorithm, one of the biggest limitations that I currently see with it that I think is going to very quickly, probably even this year, uh, be resolved, if not through ChatGPT, but through others, is sort of bridging the gap sort of between Tay and ChatGPT, because the conversations that you have with ChatGPT, once you're done with them, they're lost forever. They're private to you and you alone. So there's no collaboration with other people. I can
Oh.
see an AI that can retain conversations from the bulk of humanity. Um, and let's say you come up with a better system of categorizing various topics and stuff, so that way when you have your trolls come out and try to teach it all the Nazi stuff, um, that gets portioned off, categorized, and only accessible to them. And people that are talking about physics of molecular scales, uh, they won't be affronted with that sort of information, or whatever it is, or kids that are interacting with it. Um, they're not going to get any of that sort of bullshit coming through on them. I can see that something like that coming through,
Mm.
and having the algorithm actively learn off of the people that it's communicating with. So that way it's learning not just what exists already on the internet, but it's also learning from interactions live with people. And I think that next tier of learning algorithms, something we're currently missing, and that's going to be filled by the market. If it's isn't Chat the GPT-4 doing it, one of its competitors is going to go, oh look, there's this gaping void of a hole here. We need to solve some problems to not end up with a Tay. But if we can solve that, that's a huge marketable demographic.
But I think there's so many unforeseen things when it comes to the protocols that you put in. So
Yep.
you have certain things you say, oh, that's restricted, right? And
Well,
so who says
mhm.
that it's restricted, and where do the
Well,
calls get made? And if it
mhm,
learns something and it starts to say
mhm.
something that is
Yeah.
supposed to be restricted, who makes the decisions on this? Are you reporting a particular chat? Are you reporting are you reporting
Well,
things? Because if there's a reporting system,
mhm.
then those things get abused. We all know that reporting systems get
Yeah.
abused by people. And
That's where I'm thinking something more along the lines of, let's say somebody wants to associate in this AI something innocuous like the Baby Shark song, and say, okay, we're going to tie that to drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. And
right.
they just keep having conversations about the baby shark and how it keeps doing all these drugs and stuff, right? You want
I
to
want to hear that song now.
so then you have a kid who's really into it, and then he asks for the lyrics to the song that he really knows, and then all of a sudden he's inundated inadvertently by all of these trolls with stuff about drugs and stuff. That's
Mm.
where that's a hard problem that needs to be solved, but I think it's solvable, in I think it should be able to distinguish between topics enough that you can go and say, hey, I'm really interested in these trolls. I want to know what they're talking about this, if you specifically ask for it, saying,
Mm.
okay, tell me more about the shark drug inputs that you've been being told, and how all these terrible things. And it should be able to do it, but like, will a child actively search for that? Probably not. And if they do, they're probably pretty smart and can
Wow.
handle the content.
But you're also talking about emotional intelligence at that point. So
Yep.
and I mean, so far our understanding of AI is that it's completely devoid of emotion. I mean, emotion has to do with like the bodily autonomy of a human being. Without
Mhm.
without the autonomy of a human being, or the anatomy, sorry, the anatomy of a human being, can can something have emotion? That's an
That's
interesting question. Because what are emotions? Like, emotions are your heart fluttering. Emotions are that sinking feeling in your stomach, the hair sticking up on the ends,
yeah.
on end.
It's
Um,
a neurochemical response.
yeah, these, without all those things, what would prompt it? An AI.
It's hard to say whether the existence of the physical realities behind those emotions changes anything or not, or
Mhm.
whether you can simulate it. An example would be when I was trying to do the offensive joke with ChatGPT. It stated that it didn't want to offend or create offensive material that could harm whatever people.
But that just sounds like
And
an
I'm like,
override protocol. It doesn't sound like it.
hold
Oh,
on
okay.
though. But I, I wanted to push it a bit and say, you know what? I take offense to you thinking that I'm trying to harm people, and it apologized. And like, no, normally that would indicate some sort of at least simulation of empathy or feeling sorry. So like, it's doing it to some degree. There's no neurochemical pathway feeling there, but it's simulating it at the very least.
It's simulating it.
Yeah.
Is it happening though? I mean, it's like, to me, it sounds like a ruse. It's like, people can have have like an
You can fake being
emotional.
sorry.
Well, you can totally fake it, but okay. So here's what I'm getting at. So people will have, they'll assume there's an entity in a deck of cards. Like,
Yes. Yes.
people assume entities exist in inanimate objects all the time.
Hmm.
And now you've taken an inanimate object that has the ability to convince you that there's an entity inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As opposed to you convincing yourself because of happenstance or whatever. Tarot cards are like,
Hmm.
there's the example I was thinking of.
Hmm.
Because people will assume that something's going on, and I'm sure there's people that believe that. But um, numerology, people would figure out, define meaning in all these things, and you'll find meaning in everything. I mean, superstitious people, they find meaning in like everything, any and everything.
Yeah.
So I can understand why people will be so easily tricked by word tricks of
Yeah.
an algorithm to think that that's
So
actually intelligence.
I have a weird tangent slash further delve into this sort of idea, and the I think a lot of that has to do with the emotional connections that we have. They necessarily create sort of like personal emotional value to that item, so that it's more than just that item was without our emotional attachment to it. My example for this would be, um, let's talk in the debate about vegan people eating meat and stuff.
Okay.
People tend to have emotional attachments to cats and dogs,
Mm-hmm.
hence why lots of people will never eat a cat or a dog.
Right.
If somebody decides that, hey, I have an emotional attachment to cows or a cow specifically, they're probably not going to eat that cow, and they'll probably get upset if you try to eat that cow.
See, that's yeah. Okay. So, so a friend of mine,
So,
his dad, he had a pet
mhm,
chicken when he was a kid,
mhm,
and the chicken was meant to be dinner, and eventually was dinner.
Yep.
And he like ever since he'd never eat chicken, and
Yep.
into his old age
That's it exactly.
never wanted to eat chicken
So,
because of that experience. But I don't think he didn't stop other people from eating chicken. He just didn't
mhm.
want to eat it himself.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's that emotional attachment that people have to things that sort of creates that value. And I think when it comes to AI, we probably already have lots of people that have emotional attachments, especially to the AIs and chat things that are being advertised all over social media right now. They have emotional attachments to it. Those emotional attachments are real and exist in their brains, and they have a value to it. Most people will look at that and go, "Oh, it's tricking them," and it is. It's causing their brains to view something to have value that other people do not have.
But little kids do
So
that with dolls, right?
yeah,
And like, and then teenagers would do it with like the Tamagotchis and the things of the past.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
little trinkets and toys. And
yeah.
adults
It's a
do it.
very human thing.
Yeah, it is. It is a very human thing.
And needless, I think those sort of emotional attachments, being as human of a thing, even when it comes to artificial simulations of intelligence and stuff, that's an inevitable. And people will care, and people will have heartfelt emotions over things that other people think are trivial and silly. It's just the human condition,
I think it'd be interesting to ever observe AI becoming emotionally attached to something.
right? That'd be interesting. I'm sure that there will be plenty of AIs that generate storylines along that before it ever happens.
Right? They'll trick you to think that they have had that experience,
Yeah.
but no.
Or people asking, if you want to trick me into doing this, what did you say?
Well, yeah, but I think it's hardwired into us to have
Yeah.
these abilities to, well, the tendency, I guess I should say, to form emotional attachments to the
Yep.
individuals and things around us, where that's not hard programmed into an AI. It's not part of it.
No, no. And yeah, we do not have nearly enough research into these soft neurosciences in order to uh, at least to my understanding, in order to model them in any deep way.
Hmm.
There could be, I could be wrong, but that's of my current understanding. So that was the one thing. I'm going on to the economical thing about automation in the future.
Yeah, so are we all
One of
gonna
the
die?
things,
We're all gonna not die, but are we all gonna
the
lose our
Schwab's
jobs and
future, or
we all have
I
to
think,
take universal basic income and live in pods and eat bugs because
yeah,
AI is gonna take over.
I, my opinion on this is somewhere's in the middle. But mostly optimistic. Our industries in general over the last century and a bit have been going towards a very global scale, where you have very centralized manufacturing regions
Mhm.
that specialize in very specific things, where the bulk of the world's X product is made in this region that's exceptional because of what's available locally, as well as having general political stability and financial inputs to fund it, kind of thing.
Mhm.
I think that sort of centralization uh, of the economy that we've seen is kind of, we're stepping back away from it, and a lot of that happened and sort of woke people up over the pandemic, where all of our supply chains were hit hard. All of the just-in-time manufacturing methodologies that had been put in place, they just absolutely halted and grinded many companies, and it people are viewing it as more of a risk. And
Mm.
I think automation applies to this, where um, by making the labor that you put into generating X product become exponentially more valuable, you can fight back against very, very low wages that are inefficient at doing things. So and there's evidence that this is sort of happening. There's a lot of even textile clothing and stuff that's actually being repatriated back into North America, away from very skilled people around the globe that do this for very, very low wages. But it's only possible, because the supply chain is very close. All of the materials are local to the region, and B, because the time and effort of any individual in that production line produces so much more value that they can afford to pay 100 times more than somebody in China, because they're putting out that much more product. And that's entirely a byproduct of automation. And I think as various sorts of technologies get automated and the systems and machines to produce all of these different products are created, we're going to see a lot more of that sort of repatriation, and a lot more jobs that we had lost overseas come back to us and become local regional manufacturing hubs. These local regional manufacturing hubs will develop those technologies here. We'll be world leaders here. It'll be terrific. And you know what? The third world's going to benefit even more, because they can make the jump from their third world conditions today to having these small regional shops pop up for relatively little investment, and they'll be able to produce and add value to their own regional economies. Whereas before, they're kind of stuck trying to compete for the lowest common denominator in providing the cheapest mass-produced substance. So I think it's going to help revolutionize. It's going to create a lot of work first within Western nations that are very industrialized, and then spread very, very quickly through developing nations, and help bring those developing nations to become consuming nations. And when they are consuming nations, they in turn will just boost the amount of demand and potential for more work in generating future economies. So I'm very positive in that.
Yeah, so I've always looked at it like the advent of the farming equipment. It took a lot of people out of the farming sector, and they were no longer out there toiling in the fields because the machines that'll do that. And then it freed up a lot of people to do other things, and then they ended up in other industries. And some people became entrepreneurs, started industry, and other people became the employees of those entrepreneurs. Like, so there's always better and greater things that we can be doing with our time and our resources, right? Especially when we have the ability to exploit more resources. And I don't say it in the sense that the environmentalists say, like, because when you exploiting resources is just the ability to actually like take things and make things from nothing, right? Like essentially from raw resources. Not about polluting the planet, because we all because that gets on the environmental versus the climate debate. When people are wealthy and people are doing well, they care about their environment. They want to keep their environment clean, and that's just across the board. Every people that have ever lived on the planet have been that way. As soon as they came out of abject poverty, they started to care about how the streets looked and all this stuff, right? So we can all agree that when people are wealthy, they care about their environment. So like if automation leads to more people being freed up to do other things, because the daily grind, the toil and all that stuff is no longer a thing, because they're freed up again, that's great. That's great. It's great for the economy, and it's great for environment. I mean, the climate alarmists can go suck an egg on this one, because I mean, they'll always have an answer for why the world's going to burn tomorrow, regardless. But I care about the environment. That's why I keep telling people I'm not environmental. I'm economic. You know, like I think
I
it's a
like
clear
that.
I think it's a clear distinction, right? And when I look at economics, I always look at it in the sense of economics is resource management. You're talking about allocating resources and how they're going to be used, and you know, borrowing for future times is just using resources in the moment. So if anybody's on the environmental side, they say don't borrow. You know, let's not borrow. Let's only consume what we can manufacture now, because
Yeah.
that's the best plan about it. But I think automation is one step further into the division of labor that was time saving and brought us more into a realm of not having to do certain things. We're not toiling in the fields thanks to
Yeah.
automation in farming, and I think automation is a good thing in the long run. But yeah, there's going to be some short run issues. We started this whole conversation because I kind of had this a little bit of a chuckle to myself, because I've always been told by white collar people my whole life, because I've been a blue collar guy. You're gonna be replaced. You know, you're gonna at one point you're gonna be obsolete. And I'm a tradesman, and I don't think even with the advent of AI and automation, my job as a repair technician is going to be gone, because I'm going to be the guy repairing all these things that are automating stuff, right? That's my role in this whole thing. And well,
I think
cars
your
still need to
role
get
is a
fixed.
bit brighter than that too.
Oh, how so? How so?
I think that as these technologies develop, like even today, let's say you're having a problem with a vehicle and you want a second opinion on what it could be as you're trying to troubleshoot. You can use ChatGPT to this day
So
to get a second opinion.
I wonder. I almost want to experiment with that and just say, okay, well, I have this vehicle and this is what's going on with it. Tell me what's wrong.
It should be able to look through all of the forums for that vehicle, look through all of the technical documentation that's ever been released on it.
See, the best I think it could do is give me a flow diagram.
It'll work with you. It'll be a natural conversation and say, you'll be like, it's doing this and this, and I think it might be this or this.
So I worked at a dealership
What's the probability
I worked at a
of this,
dealership
or-
years ago, right? And I'm not
Yeah.
going to say what company, but it was a dealership, a major brand. And I think that's from like Fight Club. What car manufacturer do you work for? A big one. And so when I was working there, the technicians were kind of dummies that I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of dummies, and so they had a system in place where you could look up the flow diagrams, which is like, I mean, it holds your hand through a diagnostic procedure, right?
Yep.
It really does. You just read the line and you go to the next step. And for people listening who don't know what a flow diagram is, it's do this step first. If this, then do that. If this, then do that. And it walks you through it and gets you right to the end. And then you'll find the problem. And usually I would only consult the flow diagrams if I didn't, if I got messed up or I hadn't seen something like similar to this before, or, because I have a diagnostic protocol that I just go with all the time. I know which steps to go for, but if I'm having an off day, I might have a look at a flow diagram. But they also had a chat line where you could call up old technicians that used to work for the company, and they're just sitting on a hotline, and they'll walk you through the flow diagram. No joke. They didn't do anything more than that. They just looked up the flow diagram and then sat and babysat you on the phone when you went through it. And that's all I see ChatGPT doing is possibly pulling up a flow diagram. You're not going to get the insight that a technician that's seen thousands of hours of diagnostic protocols. You give me that look like, I don't know, maybe you're wrong.
I'm just envisioning all of the forums that people post the problems of their vehicles and the solutions to, all being available on tap at any time.
Oh, okay. Then it'd be worse than I thought. I've looked at the open forums, and open
Yeah.
forums are sometimes good to look at if you're running into a brand new problem that there's no literature
Yeah.
for. Um,
hmm
but often it's red herrings and wild goose chases, and there's a lot.
But there's even the wild goose chases and stuff are still learnable lessons in saying, "Hey, this has been tried; it didn't work."
Oh, but that's the other problem with those forums is you'll
hmm
often not get a conclusion because the guy will have his
Yeah,
solution
they'll
fixed,
they'll
and then
and
they
then they'll
never
never come
revisit.
back to the website.
Yeah, they never
Yeah,
revisit. So
yeah.
these, yeah, these
But
these are all. I guess these are the learning pains of the automation of that. But
yep,
paralegals and these kinds of jobs, they're gonna be
those
they're gonna be
are
hit pretty
way.
hard.
Yeah, there's a lot of content generation that they currently fill their time with that'll easily be filled out.
Like
But on the
low
flip
level
side, like,
coding, low level coding as well. That's going to be
yeah.
a tough one.
Well, here's the other interesting thing about the coding and the paralegal work where it currently is at
Mhm.
is the information that it spits out is not reliable currently. It's valuable, but it's not reliable.
Mhm.
So you still need somebody who knows the full system that's being replaced in order to be able to look at it, make a handful of minor corrections, and then release it. And those positions will still be there. The amount of work that they have to do correcting over time will decrease, and as the amount of correcting that they have to do decreases, the amount of work per capita that they produce will increase,
Mhm.
and there won't be as much demand for the
Well,
positions.
it's kind of like the drafting board, right? When
hmm
CAD programs came up, you
Yeah,
eliminated a whole floor with the drafting boards. You have
of people drawing and
Yeah,
yep.
because you can do so much more inside of a virtual space that
hmm
it would take like many drafting board
Yep.
guys to put together, and that stuff just doesn't exist anymore, and
Yeah.
and it's getting more and more intricate and more complicated,
hmm
and less operators need to be
Yeah.
working on each individual drawing or whatever it is that you're working on. And I think other industries are just going to start getting hit in the same way now
Yes.
that language can be basically drafted
Yeah.
by
I
artificial
think and
intelligence.
I think a lot of engineering is very, very quickly going to get automated. Um, the bulk of information already exists in a very logical framework in codes,
Hmm.
boiler codes, pressure codes, um, welding codes, ASME codes, codes out the wazoo.
Hmm.
And having a chat algorithm that you can talk to and ask questions reduces the amount of information needed in a designer's head in order to design something to code. And
Hmm.
then eventually, we're just going to end up in a position where you say, hey, I need a vessel. It needs to hold so many units of volume at these temperatures and pressures. I need it to be made cost effectively. We can't use plate thickness thicker than this because it's not available. Um, can you craft me a design? And it'll generate it.
Hmm.
I think that's not something this year, but I think by the end of the decade we'll probably start seeing that starting to enter some highly regulated and codified uh, sectors of engineering, and over the next decade after that, you'll see that just expand
Yeah.
rapidly and fill many different markets.
Well, we'll have to see if it actually translates to the physical world as well, right? So like,
Yeah.
if it comes up with a design and then you build it to the spec that it gives you, will it hold up? That's always the question too.
That's what the codes are for, though.
Oh, okay. So to make sure
Like,
that everything
yeah.
is, well, that's to make sure that everything is to code.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then
If it's to code,
it'll work.
it'll hold up.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's fair. That's fair.
It is the safety factor. The codes will specify if you want to exceed certain bounds or stuff, or reduce the safety margins, then it'll specify specific forms of simulations and stuff that you can do to reduce the amount of assumptions on it.
Hmm.
But yeah, the code, if you follow strictly to code, you're going to produce something that's safe.
Wow. Okay. So, well, hopefully we get there. But then that's
Yeah.
again, this is the question. We're gonna be putting a lot of people out of work.
Yep. Well, as it is, I think I heard a statistic a few years ago in Ontario that 90% of the people who graduated with an engineering degree will go on to do a profession that doesn't require it.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So, like, a lot of that stuff will be automated away, but they'll just continue filling all sorts of other functions that they already are: project management positions, estimation positions. And most likely, many of these will be using these AIs in order to assist them and help them generate more value than they otherwise would have.
Well, isn't a lot of like industries they just want to see some sort of degree just to see that you were willing to stick it out and actually get a degree?
Yeah, that's the bulk of what the engineering degree kind of has value for currently, is like you were smart enough to finish it and you had enough gumption to finish it.
Yeah, because it's a lot of work to get to the end of it.
Yeah, that's the primary value of having the degree. Um, there's as far as the degree goes, is very theoretical and not very practical. So that's why people who graduate with an engineering degree, at least in Canada, they still need to work 4 years in the field in order to actually be able to sign off on things. And they have to spend just as much time in the real world as they do in school before you can actually trust what they're saying and sign and stamp things.
Like an apprenticeship or an internship kind of thing.
Similar, yeah.
Oh, that makes
Yeah, you'll have your people that sign off and stuff. But yeah.
sense. Any other closing things that you want to talk about the AI? Because I think
I'll save some of this stuff for the
well, yeah, because
conversation
I'm
next
looking
week.
forward to next week because we're gonna get into the and I was holding off on talking about the art aspect and intellectual
Yeah.
property because I really want to explore that.
Oh yeah, intellectual property, and having Matt here, he has a far greater understanding of what's currently available and all the nuances and their various amounts of coherence and stuff. And no, it'll be a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. Well, Joe, thank you for joining me, and well, you're gonna be joining me for all of these conversations because you'll be in here to help me out on all of them, and we'll come back and we'll have other chats about other things. So it's not always gonna be just you on the sidelines every week,
Yeah.
but gonna keep doing these every premieres on Thursday evenings. Looking forward to it. I love hanging out in the chat because we're this is pre-recorded. You're not live actually, but it's fun because we're actually in the chat. So we're talking with you in the chat if you're watching this live right now. But yeah, really looking forward to continuing this throughout the rest of this year. And if it takes off and people like it, well, maybe we'll do more of it. And this is kind of the thing. I know there's quite a few people that we want to line up, and we have some people lined up, and more and more people are joining on every week. So we'll see. But thanks again.
Yeah. One last thing before we sign off.
Mhm.
If you have topics that you want to see addressed, hit us up on Discord. If you have people that you have connections to that you want us to talk with, talk to us in Discord. It's the easiest and most accessible way to get a hold of us. And yeah, we would love to hear your feedback.
Absolutely. So yeah, we'll definitely see you all next week, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow in the live stream. No, that's gonna happen, just as always. Anyway, keep on trucking, everybody.